Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again for this new day, new Wednesday, two new topics with two new great speakers that we have today. So this is an initiative by Cogent, which is Let Us Talk It, and we aim to create an informed and enhanced community to free by doing a free knowledge sharing within this platform. So we appreciate your time joining us today with a 1 hour packed informational hour. Uh, so we have two new topics. First one is three ways to build better business relationships. And it is a methodology on how to develop new relationships in business that are impactful. So as the actual description it is, we are very curious and eager to know with regards to this topic. And this topic will be given to us by Blue Flores, which is a business development at Quantum Metric. And he is an experienced business development professional with a current focus on building and facilitating new relationships within Fortune 500 companies as it relates to their digital customer experience strategy. So before joining tech, Blue is a consultant for the city of San Antonio, where he executed community engagement and economic development initiatives that resulted creating a more beautiful, playful, welcoming, and prosperous downtown. And without further ado, let's give it the time to Blue Flores. Take over, please.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction. So yes, my name is Blue Flores, and as mentioned, today I'm going to share the three ways to build better business relationships. So this is an outline I've created within the past 3 years that I've been in business development in various different roles. And it's an outline for how to go unknown to known to trusted and liked. So there's different variable applications for this methodology. But first, I'm going to share a little bit more about my background. Then I'll talk a little bit more about the importance of strong business relationships. I'll dive deep into the three ways to actually build those better business relationships, explore some real-world situations where you can utilize the methodology, and then I believe we will wrap up with some questions and answers. So first, a little bit about myself. So this interest in relationship building began in undergrad when I became a research fellow at the University of Texas. I was a distinguished undergrad researcher through the Mellon Foundation and also the Educational Testing Service. And my research just focused on the macro-sociological and biological implications of ethnic morphophonology as it relates to institutional racism. So because of that, I became a partner through the Graduate School of Education at Stanford, and I was able to present original research at several conferences around the US, including the SWAYO Stanford Conference and also other conferences across the US. And through Stanford, I was able to explore different consultation theories and teaching practices on ethnography and organizational management, and then became a consultant where I served for different management and consultative organizations, including election campaigns, nonprofits, and other government institutions. So after I finished all my research activities, all that fun writing, I joined a nonprofit organization called Centro San Antonio. And Centro San Antonio is a partner with the city to basically make San Antonio, downtown San Antonio, a vibrant, thriving community. And I joined during the height of the COVID pandemic, and I was tasked with assisting small businesses that were affected by COVID with different strategies that were implemented by the city of San Antonio. So this included different revenue generation and maximization activities. And that's really where my research background got to be put in place because I was acquiring new business for the PID for Centro by participating in local press releases. So I was writing media prints and also partnering with other publications and experience events. So this meant going out into the community and building relationships with local leaders and business owners. It was especially tough because building relationships with leaders and these business owners that were disrupted by the COVID pandemic were a little standoffish, rightfully so, because a lot of their businesses were at the verge of shutting down. But nonetheless, it was fulfilling to be able to assist small business owners in my hometown and to stay open and thrive. So eventually, after my contract was up for renewal with Centro, I decided to leave and pursue a career in tech. And I joined a small tech company based out of the UK, and they were starting an office here in San Antonio. So I was responsible for just creating new relationships with small businesses for new business opportunities and also new channel and alliances. So then finally, after that, I moved to my current position where I am at Quantometric, and I now consult some of the world's largest brands with their digital strategies, ensuring they make a lot of money and their teams are aligned and efficient and that their customers are in love with them. And currently I'm responsible as well for all business development opportunities for Fortune 100 companies that are within the central and west regions in the US. So I packed in a lot about myself right there, but I wanted to paint a picture of what it looks like and what my background looks like and how it would relate to relationship building. I do also want to mention earlier before this call, we were talking about how I am a digital nomad. Started this lifestyle about 3 months ago. So I'm originally based out of San Antonio, Texas, but I decided to book a trip for a month to Panama. And about 2 weeks into the trip, I decided I didn't want to go home. And the great thing about the world we live in today and working from home is you can work from anywhere as long as you have a stable internet connection. So been traveling around the world so far. I've been in Boca del Toro, Panama. I've been in Medellin, Colombia, and now it is actually my first week in Oaxaca, Mexico. Have a lot of cool things planned. But this is also important because when you enter a country where you don't really know anybody, or maybe you know a couple people, this methodology can also be used to make friends. And I'll talk a little bit more about how it can be utilized for friendships and dating and all that good stuff, because really, it's not just business relationships, it's any relationships. So there is a little bit of background about myself. Let's go ahead and move on to business relationships. So what are they? So business relationships are professional relationships that garner positive outcomes through partnership, collaboration, and support. And they look like a manager and an employee relationship. This could be a sales relationship with a new client. This also could be a sales relationship with the current client. These business relationships can also be with competitors. So let's say you own a company and you want to hopefully build a great relationship with your competitor. This also could be relationships within leaders in your industry. So why are these relationships important? So with sales, it's obvious. One, more opportunities, right? And two, just grow your career. The second reason why it's very important is you are seen more as a thought leader. When your name, first of all, our industries are very small. In tech, everyone knows each other. So when you are seen as a thought leader, someone who can be seen as they could get it done, seen as a professional, you have a more positive reputation. So that's a big reason why it's important. Another reason is to explore and learn. One advice someone gave me earlier this year that I take into heart is that you should surround yourself with people that you want to be like. Surrounding yourself with people who are more experienced, people who are in higher positions than you, exploring and learning who they are and building those relationships will help you grow as a person as well. So why should you care as well? This could open some job opportunities because your name is known in the industry or whatever industry you're in. You could constantly get hit up by recruiters, people wanting you to support them as some type of consultative position, but also just make it so you'll never have to really apply for a job. People are just seeking you. And obviously with sales, with those more opportunities, you'll help you drive more sales. And then this also could just help you be successful, building additional solidification of a current relationship. So just making current relationships stronger. So that's a little bit of background on what business relationships are. So the first section of the three methodologies to building stronger relationships, business relationships, is fear. This one's very important because oftentimes when people are seeking that new relationship, the person themselves are scared, but really the confidence should come in within yourselves. Also, the fears in the other person. How is trust built in an abrupt conversation with a stranger? Someone who does not know you. Imagine walking into a Starbucks and you want to strike up a conversation with someone. How would you do that? Or let's say you're on LinkedIn and you see someone who could potentially be a fit for your product. How could you get them interested in chatting with you? I think fear has increased. It started in the pandemic. Values have changed since the pandemic with lives lost, people getting sick. People are closer to their families. They value family more. They value their time more. So people engaging with you is more difficult and it's not easy. So first, confronting that fear is the most important. And knowing that the other person is fearful as well. Currently, with the financial crisis in the United States, most companies are very hesitant to purchase outside products and partner with outside vendors as well. So limiting that fear of like, okay, this product is going to cost me X, Y, Z. Why would I even talk to you? Like, it's going to be so expensive. We're going to have to go through all these processes. There's a fear in that sense as well. But let's say you are looking for a job and the state of the economy, since it's uncertain, like the company could be fearful of like, well, what is this person being? Is this going to be a great investment for the company? So before any productive conversation can happen, there needs to be some sort of transparency about getting permission to engage. So once everyone's open to learning within this one-on-one relationship, there could be a shift in focus to building curiosity. So that's the next thing. So first is fear. Knowing that one, you as the person is fearful, the other person is fearful, and now eliminating that fear because you're unknown. So curiosity is my favorite part, actually. It is the most important strategy in releasing that fear. The first strategy I always like to start with is a compliment. So if you notice someone that got an award on LinkedIn, you could say, congrats on getting this top 10 achievement award in XYZ. If they got a new position within their work or got promoted, congratulations. If it's their birthday, saying happy birthday, those little things go a long way. And the reason why this is important is because when you give something to somebody without expecting anything in return, that releases that fear, because oftentimes, especially on LinkedIn, when somebody connects, they are quick to pitch their product or quick to pitch whatever they want from you. But in reality, most LinkedIn users use that platform to connect with others who are within their industry. So starting off with a compliment can release that fear because you're not asking for anything. I also like to, like in the beginning, I mentioned that this could relate to dating and other situations. For example, let's say you go to a specific gym and you want to strike a conversation with someone specifically. You could say, oh my God, nice shoes. And that goes into the second thing, advice. So once you've broken that fear barrier, you could go into more discovery and building curiosity. And with advice, you could say things like, well, what do you think about this article? And send them an article. If it's a sales relationship, you could send them an article within their industry. If it's a job opportunity, you could say, hey, well, what do you think about my specific experience? Or you could also ask, well, what would you recommend to someone in my position? This could be, again, a sales or recruiting or even dating. Like I said, oh, I like those orange shoes that you got. What brand do you prefer, Nike or Adidas? And this gets the person talking. People want to feel important. They want their voices to be heard. And whenever you're curious, it makes them feel special. So those are the two things I like to do when trying to release that fear. The last one, trust. Trust is the final part because first, you're unknown to known. Once you block that fear and you build that curiosity, now you're known. So how do you become trusted and liked after being known? Now, in a sales mindset, you have to know who your who the person you're developing a relationship is. So that could mean understanding their product, understanding their job role, understanding their specific initiatives. This could mean listening to recordings or podcasts they've done, researching their competitors, learning from other team members on their team, and basically making it a focus to become a master of them. And now it might sound a little creepy, but whenever you want to build these relationships, you have to do some research on the person. And because really, it's all about building value. And relationships do not succeed unless both parties have value. So how can you build that value, right? Understand what do they care about. So again, listening to those recordings, like I mentioned, researching their competitors, and then delivering that. So whether that's delivering your product or whether that's setting a meeting with them, if it's a job opportunity, okay, well, what does this company care about? What are they looking for in this specific role? And then delivering yourself. I guess the value would be yourself. Those are the two main things when building trust: understanding the other person, incorporating that curiosity in it, and then providing value. And you can utilize the techniques in the curiosity section to build that trust even more. So if it's someone's birthday, send them a coffee. If they got a promotion, you can also send like a little gift as well. And again, for the reason why is you want to eliminate that fear. You want to give them something without expecting something in return. And then finally add on to that, continue being curious, continue caring about what they do. And this will build that trust and eventually become liked. I think a final part that I don't have listed here, and it's extremely important, is being genuine. Being yourself in whatever the way that is highly crucial in getting people to actually like you, because if you don't love yourself, how the hell is anybody else going to love you? That's a famous quote. Hopefully somebody knows that. Yeah, exactly. On my LinkedIn, I openly share that I love Lady Gaga. I share a lot of community initiatives that I do. I share my traveling tips. And that's because I am a human first. Like, yes, we all in our lives, we have our career goals, we have sales opportunities that we'd like to create. But really, when you start with who you are as a person first and being genuine and actually caring about, building this relationship, people can tell. And that's when you become liked. And that's the final part. So real world applications, how can you utilize, once you've built these strong relationships, how can you utilize them to your advantage? And what I've been thinking about my current relationships as kind of like a professional sports team. You have different people in different sections, and it's a constant scrimmage, repetitions, and you have to improve the different executions on your team. So while you still have your relationship, you need to continue incorporating all three of those methodologies to keep it strong and make it even stronger. But like I mentioned, how can you actually utilize this relationship? So let's say you want to look for a job. You can utilize a relationship to ask someone for a connection. If you want a sales opportunity, you can ask one of your relationships to introduce you to someone. So extending these relationships and opening your network, that's one of the biggest real world applications. And then when you build onto those existing ones, it's just like a sports game, like I mentioned. So talked a little bit about my background, some real world applications, fear, curiosity, and trust, and why they're important to building a strong relationship and what a strong relationship is. And hopefully everyone took at least one thing from today's presentation, whether it's fear, curiosity, or trust, or just one of them. And I challenge everyone to seek out an industry thought leader or someone that they want to connect with. And this can be either through LinkedIn or email, and utilize the methodology that I shared to try to create a new relationship and share with me how it went. But now I believe we have time for Q&A, correct?
Yes, definitely, Blue. Thank you so much for that wonderful session. So yes, we are open for a question and answer uh, section of the session. So anyone would like to ask or share their insights are free to raise their hand or unmute their mic. Please feel free to do so. So we have here, okay, attendees, and yeah. So you mentioned about facilitating relationships. Like, have you had collaborations or relationships, or I mean, mediated relationships with like big businesses, or like, are you allowed to share the names of some of those businesses?
Yeah, I don't think are you asking if I can share some of the businesses that I work with currently? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so Quantum Metric, I can share what Quantum Metric, who they work with as a whole, but we work with companies like Lululemon, Alaska Airlines, American Airlines, um, Under Armour, Adidas, a lot of retailers, but also banking, M&T Bank. So we have a large list of clients. And like I mentioned, I mostly focus on Texas-based clients and other clients that are basically in the breadbasket of the United States.
All right. Thank you. And has there been like any chance that like the company that you work with has like a downtime in terms of its relationship to other companies that they are working for or they are working with? I mean, like breaking some of the factors or the aspects regarding business relationships, for example, the trust or being genuine. Was there a chance that it happened?
Yes, this happens into the day-to-day life. And the great thing about working for my company is they embrace that culture of being yourself and being genuine and being curious and all these factors that I mentioned. So the current clients that I work with, I'm able to use those relationships, like I mentioned, and solidify them and then enter areas, parts of the businesses. Because we work with extremely large companies, we have opportunities to sell into different parts of those businesses. But also, like I mentioned, the industry is so small, people know each other. So if I have a great relationship with, let's say, somebody at company A, and they move on to company B, I could potentially open a new opportunity with company B if I had a great relationship with the person at the first company. And they could just mention my name or mention our company. And that's what I've seen has brought me a lot of success. And all of this has brought me a lot of success, being myself, going out during my outreach. And uh, I tend to make a lot of silly jokes. I didn't get an opportunity to share all my dad jokes today, but people really just enjoy a great personality and being yourself. And that's how you can, transfer on to existing clients or future clients. And this is a sales mindset because my background is in sales, but you can utilize this in other areas, like I mentioned, in recruiting, or just trying to get a mentorship thing going. If you see someone, you're like, wow, I really love the things that they are sharing, and I would love to learn more from them. Using this methodology could get their interest and get them to, share their experience with you.
Perfect. Thank you. And yeah, I think that's well, yeah, are you able to share like from the endeavors that you've had, what is the experience that you can consider as your best success story?
Oh, that's a great one. I have a few. Uh, so there is at the end of last year, one of our sales opportunities fizzled out, and I became owner on the account, and I decided to, incorporate this methodology. I was curious, understanding what the business needed. Why did we lose that business? Who are their players in that business? And tried to build some relationships in there. I actually sent some birthday cookies to somebody in the business, and she wasn't the right person to talk to. So she liked me a lot and everything that we talked about, and she made me a referral. That person ended up being a dead end. Eventually met this one person, and it was her last day at the company. And she's like, you know what, I'll chat with you. Let's see how I can help you. And she spent an hour with me, talking with me, sharing, how could we generate an opportunity again within this business? And I believe now it's an over $800,000 deal, which is really nice. But it all started with this mentality that I had of breaking that fear. There's a reason why we had lost that opportunity, being curious, finding the right stakeholders, seeing what they care about within their business, and show how we can provide those positive business outcomes, and then building that trust. And that's what gave me not only that opportunity, but when that person left to a different company, I now built an opportunity within that company as well because of the strong relationship that I built. And I see that happening quite often because people are changing jobs a lot within the past 2 years. It's great to make yourself have a positive reputation, because you never know where someone might end up, if it could help you or if it could hurt you. Because if you didn't do this methodology, you could be seen as someone who is just too salesy, too lazy, too incompetent, basically. So overall, this is a great structure to just be seen as a great professional, and it has helped me a lot, generate a lot of opportunities and build some awesome mentorships as well. I have a lot of great mentors within the industry as well.
Well, that I agree in terms of it. They could help you or they could hurt you. That's a great statement that we have here today. Well, thank you so much for that, and I really appreciate the thought. And yes, we would like to encourage the other attendees. If you would like to ask a question, please do not hesitate to unmute. Okay. I guess they're a bit hesitant. Maybe not for now, but they might like do it offline. So please let us know how they can reach you. Blue?
Yes, of course. You could find me on LinkedIn, first name, last name. So it's Blue, just like the color, Flores. Also linkedin.com/blue-flores. I'm very active on there. You can see all my content. I release new articles all the time on my industry, but also more relationship development techniques. I actually have an article being released this week on how Lady Gaga can help you build better relationships as well. So hopefully that can spark some interest, and check out my LinkedIn.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the wonderful session, Blue. And now we'll move to the next topic for today's session. And it is about soft power, future of work, and the art of storytelling. So yes, we love stories. We all do. Right from the time we are like young children and all that. We even love telling stories to the young ones. So stories give us like allegories, analogies, anecdotes, ideas we can relate to. But how do countries tell their story? So this is mesmerizing, and this will be given to us by Akshab Haradas. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it well, but he will do it for you once he opens his mic. And he is a visiting fellow at the Observer Research Foundation, ORF, based in Washington, D.C. So he is a journalist by profession. And so he also was based out of Singapore as a reporter and producer with Channel News Asia, Singapore, covering international business news. And he writes on diverse topics such as geopolitics, business, tech, and sports. His previous endeavors include working at ESPN Star and Fox Networks. He is a two-time TEDx and Toastmasters public speaker, and is a graduate from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, Tufts, having specialized in international affairs. And without further ado, let's give it to Akshab.
Well, thank you so much, Phil, and thank you for putting this together. I really appreciate it. And as I was caveating before, apologies, I'm a little under the weather. So if my voice sounds a little bit like a frog that swallowed a bar of soap, I do apologize for that. But and thank you from wherever you're joining from the rest of the world. I do wanted to kind of keep this more interactive. So I know you look at slides all day long and you've been to so many other webinars. So I don't want to make it pedagogical. So I want to make it more interactive, because that's the whole point of stories. I think Phil already read out a bit about my background, and I was thinking about how to approach this, right? There's so many ideas, and more often than not, I have like 10 different ideas running in my head, which is both good and a little chaotic when, when you try to complete a laundry list of items to do. But one of the things I thought of doing is combining a few aspects that I've been part of. I've been a journalist in the newsroom, so a lot of it has been storytelling in broadcast, storytelling in print, storytelling in digital. But also what I do now in Washington, D.C., I'm a sort of a geopolitical analyst and look at relationship between two countries. And I thought, why don't I look at the art of storytelling and look at how countries tell their stories? And more importantly, in a lot of the digital tech world that we're in, and as the previous speaker alluded to, is the ability to be a digital nomad today is apropos of the future work. So I'm going to try and find a segue to combine three very different things. So at the outset, I thought about the art of storytelling, and as Phil would have read out, we love stories because right from the time your kids, you remember these various fairy tales, these in whatever language you listen to them. They give you these anecdotes and allegories and analogies to relate to, and it's not so much about a fictitious goat on a hill or a princess waiting for Prince Charming or talking tiger, but it's about morals, because these are allegories that we think about and we've imparted them in our daily lives, because stories are not just for kids. And if you think about it more and more in the corporate world, this is where sometimes companies miss the forest for the trees. They think they're the best products, and they may look at it very internally. But when we're talking about selling externally, be it a new client, be it through a market, be it through B2B, what you need more than your product is a story that complements your product. Because too often companies just look at it as a one-way street of, this is our product to market, and we're put it out there, and if you build it, they will come. That only works in the movies. It doesn't really work that way. And I think more often than not, from my experience as a business journalist, I saw companies just disseminate information through press releases and communications without realizing that it's not one-way information. You have to think about how the end user, the end receiver is processing the information. And I want you to think about how it relates to companies and products that you use, right? Because a company may have the best product, but if they're not able to market or brand it or position it, it's of no use. And think about this a little backwards. When you were in school, more often than not, someone with the best knowledge may not make the best teacher because their classes may be dry. They would not impart the knowledge. And when they don't know how to impart the knowledge, it gets lost in a vacuum. Similarly, if you can extrapolate that information to companies and products, it makes sense, because you think about some of the best products and best companies, right? One of the best ideas in marketing or branding is something called product positioning. It's not just the product, it's how it's positioned in the mind. And you go back in time, one of the best product positioning was this company called Avis, which said, because we're number 2, we try harder. Now, Avis was losing the competition to Hertz, which is number 1 in car rentals. And everyone wants to brand themselves as number 1. No one wants to be number 2. No one wants to be Constellation. But they said, all right, let's acknowledge where we are in the market, and let's see if we can flip the story around. So they acknowledge that because they're number 2, they work harder. And that really helped them boost their sales and climb up. And you think about Apple, one of the products that we use today, a lot of us on Macs, a lot of us use iPhones, but it wasn't just the Steve Jobs technological vision. What really, it was things from his own past of calligraphy and design, and the 1984 commercial, the think out of the box. You think about Coca-Cola, one of the things on their balance sheet is the intangibility of their goodwill, their soft power, because it's not just aerated water that we're drinking. It's what Coca-Cola meant. It was moment of happiness. It was about sharing that bottle with friends on a first day of college. It was helping migrant workers collect Coca-Cola bottle caps to make calls back. It was beyond the product and how the product is positioned. You think about Nike, you're thinking about top athletes and the slogan, just do it. It's not just about shoes that, for your soles that help you run. It was where Nike saw itself in the upper echelons of sporting triumphs and athletes, and on the top of the pinnacle of success. And McDonald's itself is not just fast food. If anything, McDonald's doesn't want to be known as junk food. What McDonald's tried to position itself was, a family restaurant in some parts of South Asia. It was about a meal for everyone. So Fortune 500 companies' success is not just products. It's about how they tell their story. So it's not just iPhones and iPads and burgers and fries and shoes and apparels. It's about the consumer experience, right? Which is why today you've got these experience of, Oculus and the V and all these things that are immersion based. Because you don't want to just think about the product and its use. Otherwise, it's just a daily utility item. Do you think about a clip or a ladle or a door handle? No, because those are utility functions. But what you think about products in your mind is how it appeals to you. And combining the art of grammar with companies, when companies really become second nature, you start using it as a verb. Think about it for a second. I'll Google it. Let me Uber it. Just Amazon it. I Netflix the show the other day because they become second nature. And one of the best examples of that is a company called Xerox, right? I mean, the term was photocopy, but for a very long time when I was growing up in South Asia, I just saw it as Xerox shops. We just used it as second nature, Xerox, that colorful sign, Xerox, without even knowing there was a company and the term was photocopy, right? But because it became so ubiquitous in the mind of the consumer, that is positioning. And that's why the art of storytelling is not just something that, it's not just storybook, it's not just fiction. It's about being able to take those stories that you relate to. We still use phrases like killing the golden goose, the boy who cried wolf, because they give us concepts and notes and they give us morals that we relate to as adults. And I think that's why in your own stories, when you're putting out your story on your resume, on LinkedIn, it's what is the story you're trying to convey. You're not just so-and-so with a title SVP, director, associate manager. It's what is your story, because companies are ephemeral, titles will change, sectors will change, but think about what your story you want to tell. And I think that's why I would say content is king, but distribution, the ability to tell your content, is queen. And for those of us who play chess, we know queen's a far more powerful device than the king is. So I want to use this segue now to the second part about countries and how countries tell their story, right? Because we never really thought about countries telling their story, right? We just think about, when you think about countries, what do you think about, right? You think about certain names of countries. And if I were to ask you, and please feel free to unmute and jump in, what do you think makes a country, right? I mean, does anyone have an answer? Or
Culture?
yeah, culture is one. Some would say fixed borders. Some would say currency, right? Some would say government. True. But there are places like Somaliland and Kurdistan, which they see themselves as countries. Nagorno-Karabakh sees itself as a country, but it's not. But I think more importantly, it's the recognition from other countries that you are a country, right? But I was thinking about this a little more, and I stumbled on this article, and I gave this talk a few years ago, an Economist article called The Lottery of Life, that brought about this epiphany in me, which said, Warren Buffett said, all the best things that have happened to him are because he was born at the right place at the right time. And if you think about it, back when Warren Buffett was born, I'm guessing the 40s, America was the best place to be born, because if you think about it, in the 19th century, it was British century, because it was the Industrial Revolution made Britain this empire around the world, right? This country that was so small in geographic size had colonies all over and became wealthy. But the 20th century was the American century. As we spoke about right now before, I was talking to someone from Detroit, Michigan, the automobile revolution, the Hollywoodization, the tech era, it made America the 20th century. So I thought about this even more, like the way Warren Buffett picks stocks. Could we talk about picking countries and what are the right places? But I thought about this another step further, because countries sometimes we think project themselves as hard power. And what I want to talk about today is soft power. Does anyone know the difference between hard power and soft power? I promise it was going to be more interactive, so I'm going to make sure someone unmute.
Well, soft power, I think that's soft skills, maybe.
Okay, fair enough. That's for people. But for countries, it's a little more different, right? Like, so hard power is military might, GDP, economic growth. It is population, indexes, anything you can quantify. Soft power, right? You're right. In some sense, yes. Soft skills is something you can't measure. But what is soft power? Like, and for me, I thought about this a little different. But before I get to it, I wanted to explain the origins. came about by a Harvard academic, someone who had the pleasure meeting, called Joe Nye, who said soft power is ability of a country to attract others to itself without government, with through culture, right? And if you think about it, for the American dream, for America, soft power was Hollywood, MTV, and McDonald's in the 70s and 80s. Today, it's Korean pop in Korea. If you think about in the last 10 years, Korea's soft power just grown with Squid Games, Gangnam Style, Parasite, K-pop. And it's not Korea trying to do anything for the world. It's Korea being itself and its ability of getting others. We talk, for Japan, it's origami, it's country's food, obviously. For France, Alliance Française. So tourism is a good example of soft power, where people are attracted to you naturally. And I think at a time, we may say that it's a time of bellicosity and countries are vying for supremacy. I want to talk about why soft power and how a country can tell its story is more important. Because today we are seeing this conflict globally between nationalism and globalization, right? And you may say globalization is winning, right? Like you could be from wherever you are, come from a different ethnicity, own a different passport, but nationalism somehow has come back to the relevance, right? Like your passport is not just a document. Somehow it pegs you to a place. It dictates the terms of the countries you can visit and not visit based on things that you haven't done, based on your country and government's relations, who you may or not have voted for, relation with another country and how they view you. You may be the richest person in a certain land, but if someone does not view you as a welcoming immigrant, you may struggle to get visa. So we still have very archaic forces of nationalism at a time of interconnectedness like this. So that's what comes down to countries as well. And if you think about the earliest form of countries, the notion of countryhood back in the day was one religion, one language, one enemy, right? Because in the UK back in the day, the religion was Protestant, English was a language, so Gaelic and all got absorbed, and France across the English Channel was the enemy. So the French did it the reverse, because the British were the enemies. The French were Catholic, the British were Protestant, French was a language, and the enemy was Britain. So countries were very archaic. The notionhood of countries was very archaic. And a lot of other countries today don't follow it. And two of the countries I lived in were India and Singapore before I moved to the US. And I found two countries very different. They didn't really follow the country model. They had multi-plurality, very different from each other, as you know, from India and Singapore. One is 1.4 billion, the other is barely 5 to 6 million. But they didn't follow this notionhood, which is what made me think about how they tell their stories. I mean, in India's case, it was this chaotic country which was not meant, which in the Western world, democracies were not meant to survive in the emerging market world, because India didn't have one religion, one language, one enemy. It had all these multiple languages, multiple ethnicities, and yet it didn't balkanize. Similarly, Singapore itself, as you know, if anyone's in Asia or live in Singapore, you know it better. And I lived in Singapore for many, many years, and it kind of came about in a very rags to riches story, as Lee Kuan Yew has written, from third world to first, and has spoken about in a story that, you know, with zero natural resources has come out to be this place which is a thriving entrepot, a country for millionaires, and one which is the most business friendly. But again, this are the stories the countries have been able to tell themselves into, which is what I come back to the art of how you tell a story. Because the idea today is, the idea of nationhood is still very archaic in some ways. And if you think about it today, is we are moving to a different form of soft power. And one of the best examples for me is the American dream, which is a form of American soft power, because the American dream was based on the principle of you could come here and make it and have your own version of a mutual fund, or the American pie, to use a metaphor. It sounds like an Obama speech and a story, but no other country in the world has had from every hyphenated identity, from Algerian American to Zimbabwean Americans, some less than the others. And one would argue that at a time that we've saw in the last few years, politically, the American dream may be eroding. But even at a time when the US led war of Iraq in early 2003, 2004, the number of people, despite them disagreeing with US foreign policy, didn't go away. From US consul, a lot of people still wanted to move to America and want to be part of the American dream. Post 9/11, more people wanted to come to America. Post the financial crisis. So in some ways, this is where, we talk about, a lot of my day is also seen looking at US-China relations. And I thought about this in the other way. no matter how well you may speak Mandarin, or you may live in China and gain native fluency, or understand the Chinese business environment and the political structure, unless you're born and raised in China, you can't be Chinese. But if you think about that, anyone can be American. Mostly anyone could be British. So wherever you're from, think about your country and think about how can anyone else come in and assimilate. And I think that's the idea of a country's soft power. And I want you to think about this in another way. There was a dialogue in a movie which said, Italy for 30 years had war, murder, famine under the Borgias, but they still had the Renaissance, Michelangelo, and Da Vinci. Switzerland had 500 years of peace, democracy, and utopia, but they only invented the cuckoo clock. So while the US still has an economic, military, and diplomatic cloud, the soft power is still one of the strongest elements. As I said, from Hollywood to MTV to McDonald's in the 80s to the era of Netflix today, to the fact of Hollywood, to the fact of Silicon Valley and Wall Street, which are not just zip code areas. It's a sense of intangibility about these places that creates it. And this is not a clarion call to say America first, but it's just an idea of what countries can do, because Singapore created its own model that worked for it. And more often than not, we as individuals think about mentors, learning from others. But a lot of times countries have to implement their own models. There is no manual for countries and how they develop. So it's how the art of storytelling is not just as people, it's not just as companies. Even countries have to be able to successfully tell a story, because governments aren't very good at telling stories. It's the people that do it better. And I think that's where the ability of a country to tell its story is. It's through cultural institutions. Phil, as you said, culture is good. Cultural institutions that can attract people, because food is a good form of soft power. People genuinely want to break bread. People genuinely want to partake and enjoy different cuisines. And I think the ability for the pervasiveness of a country's cuisines can really put itself on the map. I mean, Thailand's a good example of it through tourism and its cuisines. Even though Thailand may be seen as an emerging market, part of ASEAN, which of course now the fastest growing region, but Thailand in its tourism and cuisine has really posted itself on the world map. And there's so many other countries, but for brevity of time, I wanted to use this phase. And I also want to make this more interactive, but I wanted to move on to another part, and my third part about the future work. Because what I spoke about soft power was the intangibility, right? Soft power is something that can't be felt. And you think about countries today, back in the day, during the Cold War era, there was a threat of ICBMs, nuclearization, missiles. But in the last 2 years, you've got an intangible little microbe that no one can see that brought economies to a standstill, that created a healthcare scare, that created a national security concern. National security, in our viewpoint, was protecting borders, having troop safeguard, stealth technology. But today, you think about a tiny microbe, it brought the world to a standstill, things you can't see. So, we talk from a seafood market in China to global markets, everything was just impeded. So this, of course, has now brought about a phenomenon that's never captured the world in such an unprecedented manner, that's halted economic mobility. And the fact that, we're on this virtual platform, as I say, we went from the baby boomers to the baby zoomers, because children born this era will be called baby zoomers, because that's probably the generation they'll know best. But what I wanted to talk about here is, what does a future work look like? And I think a topic a lot of you will be interested in, because I'm assuming a lot of people do work virtually right now. But if we just think about it for a second, I spoke about certain institutions, right? Like Silicon Valley and Wall Street, which is sort of what attracted America in its first place. That people wanted to come here because the institutions were here. What really makes a place, or what really attracts people economically, is when there are institutions. Why do the best footballers want to go play in Europe, right? I mean, America may be more developed, but why do the best football players or soccer players want to play in Europe? Because the institutions are there, the clubs are there, the money is there. Why do the best, if you want to learn good Mandarin, you have to go to China. Even though there might be good Chinese teaching schools everywhere else, but that's immersion is the best way. So what does the future work look like right now? Because there is a sense of homogeneity. While technology has been more egalitarian, but it's also created a new form of ubiquity, Because you think about it, in most major cities, from Singapore to Hong Kong to Tokyo to Seoul to Singapore to London, New York, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., you'll ride the metro to work. You'll find an eclectic mix of Italian, Chinese, Thai, Indian, burger, pizza places everywhere. You'll find a decent apartment to rent. You'll find a communal group of friends. Uber's, Amazon, Netflix work everywhere. So what is there? Have we now gotten to a sense of location homogeneity? Is a mountain in Maine the same as long as a forest in the a Wi-Fi router in the forest allows you to work? You can be in the middle of a Pacific Ocean. So what does it mean now? Because a lot of future work was based on the water cooler. The water cooler has a negative stereotype of employees just riffraffing, but we develop based on social interactions. And the water cooler was so important for that. We can't really interact as much through this. I mean, I'm doing my best and I'm sure you are as well. But virtual webinars, as much as it's easier for us to be wherever we are to join, perhaps do not fully complement the fact that you can't network as easily, because networking doesn't happen through your talks. Networking happens in the high tea afterwards when we exchange cards, even though they may be archaic, but we still do. So we think about right now the future of work, and will we now get to a stage where, say, Purell is more valuable than Porsche in the post-pandemic era? You know, we're getting to a stage right now where that because of our cognizance and our awareness of climate action, less commute in air travel and mobility is going to be more helpful. So will we all just work virtually? It helps people with disabilities to not having to move. But at the same time, it's also the fact that the art of conversation, tying back to the art of storytelling, happens in person, because you really learn the best when you see someone in person and in medium. And I just think the art of storytelling is the profound elements that you leave people with. So that's why I wanted to segue back and say to try and make the three elements that I started with: the art of storytelling, how countries tell the story in the future of work, and bring it back to the central theme of communications being a very central element. So Phil, I don't know how I'm doing for time. I know I'm at the half-hour mark. So I also want to keep it.
You're doing good. You're doing good. Just go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to also keep this more interactive. I know I've thrown out a load of information out there, and I tend to perhaps speak a little faster when I have a lot to share in limited time. So please jump in. Let's have a conversation.
All right. Yeah. Anyone from the attendees or the panelists, please feel free to definitely unmute. Or yeah, we have Satya who unmuted.
Yeah, hi. So it's a great conversation. I really like the way you explain things from country to product, how you position in terms of the market or the mind space. So one quick question I have, some of the success stories that you have told about Apple or the other products that we have seen, like Xerox, who have captured or renamed the photocopiers. So even there are failures that we have seen. Initially they have succeeded, but later on it got failed. Like during the COVID era, a lot of companies have evolved and went to the peak, and then they have totally perished out of the market. Like one of the big companies like Peloton, where they were good in terms of initially when they came up with product, a lot of things that they have tied up with a lot of conglomerates, but later on completely chaos. So what do you think what went wrong with the great product but somehow they couldn't sustain?
So Satya, your audio is cutting out. Is your question what went wrong with Peloton or just generally?
Yeah, Peloton. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good question. I actually just used Peloton the other day. Look, so there's no doubt about it, right? I mean, look, I do want to caveat. I'm not trying to speak from a business like a business max strategy perspective, but more on the art of communication. But since your question, I want to try and answer it. I think what went wrong is what went wrong with another app I used a lot called Clubhouse. Did you use Clubhouse, or are you familiar with Clubhouse?
Yeah.
So Clubhouse is for those who don't know, is an audio listening app where you can tune in and listen to conversations. Everyone spoke about this being the future of conversations, and it was Silicon Valley rated as 4 billion worth in VC capital. But I think what went wrong with Peloton is what went wrong with Clubhouse as well, because I think Peloton scaled well initially. What helped it was the pandemic, as people were stuck in. But when people got vaccinated, more people could go outdoors, and then the CDC guidelines were like, outdoors is definitely more healthier than indoors. So Peloton, from what I know, you can't use it outdoors, right? The whole point is indoor exercising machine. So a lot of people, gyms opened up again, exercises classes opened up again, and more importantly, people want to exercise for fresh air, right? Like the whole concept is scientifically proven. It you want to get fresh air, so a lot of people want to bike outside, want to run outside, and candidly, Peloton is a very elite equipment. I use it because I was visiting my sister and my brother-in-law, and they work from home. They got 2 kids, so they can't always go to the gym. So they Peloton when they get time to. But I don't think I can necessarily afford a Peloton. I mean, I haven't looked at the prices, but I know it's more expensive, and I don't know if it's worth it and also the mobility of it. So I currently think it's a question of the pandemic coming off a little bit. I don't think we're out of the pandemic, far from it. COVID's still a thing, but more people got vaccinated, preference for outdoors, and it's expensive. From what I know, it is expensive. I don't know if you have a Peloton, Satya, but seems like you do. So you tell me if you find the prices expensive or not. I mean, the classes are interactive, but a lot of people, I go to Orange Theory, so I get a similar interactive session with the instructor there, and I think it helps me more. And also there are everything else went virtual, so there were cheaper substitutions. So I think maybe Peloton needs to do a rebranding and see how they can come up with another competitive edge.
But one thing, right? See, the consumer behavior over the time changes. Like once you get adapted, even though everything is opened up, once people now stay at home and then see that there's another related equipment they already invested in, they're reaping benefits out of it. What do you think all of a sudden the consumer behavior changed? Even though I agree that it's all open and there are substitution, but still at times, like for instance, if you take like Tesla, okay, when the gas prices were pretty high, people now from in terms of getting into the Tesla, but even when the gas prices are going down, still the demand is pretty high. So on one side, the consumer behavior changed for good, but the other side it didn't.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Tesla for me is not just about one electric vehicles and one carbon, looking at carbon emissions and being more environment friendly. But I think what really works with Tesla I wish I owned a Tesla, the day I do, I'll be happier. But from I've ridden in people who own Tesla cars. And I think from my experience of talking to them, it's the experience of the product, how they feel about it. They don't find a car with a bigger screen like that, the fancier doors, just the comfort on it, just the smooth, right? The experience of a Tesla for them really makes it easier. So Tesla is not so much, I don't think everyone buying Tesla is doing it for being environmentally conscious, but it's also what Tesla is as a brand. It's a very elite brand. It's a very expensive car. I know there are different ranges, some cheaper than the other, but a Tesla means something the way a Mercedes and a BMW and a Porsche mean something in the minds of a consumer. It's a sense of, call it a status symbol, but it's how Tesla's positioned itself. And furthermore, everyone knows it's Elon Musk's company, and Elon Musk as a billionaire out there has been able to position the product in a way that his other competitors may not have. So again, it's the benefit that people get from the positioning of it, from the status of owning a Tesla, the comfort of the product, and of course the quality of the product. Sometimes it's not just the benefit of owning a product, and if the quality is not good, more often than not, just simply we eat at restaurants not just for the food, right? Yes, the food's good, but I'm sure for people who are good chefs, they can make it at home. There are obviously cheaper alternatives, but you go to the restaurant for the experience, for the ambiance, for the comfort, for the for the environment. And I think some of those products, because the restaurant also the company selling its product, right? Even though it's ephemeral, but that experience also comes with a Tesla. In Peloton, I do know people who still use Peloton, and it's still comfortable for a lot of people, especially on a cold winter day. You want to use a Peloton, but for it's again, Peloton will have to look at its pricing points and its price strategies, because with a lot of the sales, the uptick was during 2020 and early 2021, and that's come down. So maybe a lot more of the sales were deceptive during the pandemic. So they will have to look at a post-pandemic strategy. And I think they went from this New York corporation that was scaling to kind of scaling back down. And every company goes through cyclical troughs. Whether they survive or not, I'm not the best person to say that, but that's up to Peloton to see what the next strategy is. Because I think another point I'd always say is there's no such thing as a 5-year. When people say, "What's your 5-year plan?" That's the most archaic thing, because 2.5 years ago we could have seen a pandemic of this scale. So 5 years from now, we'll be working in places and sectors that don't even exist. 5 years before this, blockchain, AI, and Tesla were hardly things. 5 years before that, social media marketing didn't exist, and Ubers and Lyfts were not there. So the economy changes so fast. So I think one is to see the trend and see if you come out a winner or loser, and the other thing is to recalibrate. As you rightly said, Peloton, they'll have to see what. That's my opinion of what Peloton has done.
Thank you so much. Yeah, makes sense.
Thank you, Satya. Anyone else would like to share their insight or ask a question? And yeah, while we are waiting for those, if they are just formulating their questions or their queries, how can people reach you? Akshay?
Yeah, my name is literally 1 billion, Phil. I am Akshob, just Akshob, get Akshob on LinkedIn. I am Akshob on Twitter. Please reach me on Twitter or LinkedIn, and let's find time to talk. I have a website, which is akshob.com. So if you go there, you'll find my LinkedIn and Twitter as well. So please feel free to reach out. Let's connect on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, and keep the conversation going. Thank you, Satya, for viewpoints, because I remember reading this on Peloton a few months ago. So it gives me good food for thought to go back and think about Peloton again. Next time I'm on a Peloton, I'll think about it more closely. So please feel free to get in touch. Let's keep the conversation going. And are people based in this side of the world? That's in Asia. Where are people based right now? Probably too late in Asia right now. So.
Yeah, perfect. And are you working on something right now you'd like to promote or?
Yeah, I actually got two things. Thank you. Let me just drop my LinkedIn here as well. So I actually, let me in the chat box if someone wants to. This is my website. If you can just connect with me there. I actually wrote a coffee table book on 75 years on India-US relations for the company I currently work for. It's called We the People. It's right now we haven't yet started sales yet, so we're only distributing it to certain people. But for those of you who've written a book, I mean, this is a coffee table book, but it definitely took me a while to put it down together. But this is my so I think it was my baptism of fire. Like writing a book is not easy. It takes a lot out of you, because it's a very lonely experience. But when it comes out, it's totally worth it. It's kind of like training for a marathon. When you're doing it, it's only you. No one else can train for you. And look at me as if I run marathons, but it's like any exercise training. It's very excruciating, but if you want to see the gains, you got to go to the pains, right? But meanwhile, I have a podcast which I co-host with my buddy called Brandon Duke. It's on geopolitics. We just recorded an episode yesterday. Our podcast. This is my podcast website, but it's called the Global Detail Podcast. You can tune in on Spotify, Apple, any podcast platform. We're out with 8 episodes now. We're coming out with 3 more soon. So please listen, subscribe. And feel free to give me connection on LinkedIn, give me a follow, and I look forward to being able to just have a conversation with you. More importantly, lastly, if you want to get in touch with me on Twitter, this is my Twitter handle. It's @Akshob. So my name is very easy to find, so you'll know that. Yeah. And of course, thoughts, comments, critiques, feedbacks. I'm always available. So please, thank you, Phil. For reaching out. I'm so sorry. Normally, I'm easier to get a hold of, but sometimes the time zone and a bit under the weather and traveling. So apologies for the back and forth.
Nothing to apologize. It's a pleasure for giving us your time for today. I saw Satya earlier unmuted. Is there something you would like to talk about, Satya?
No, I just was able to say thanks to Akshob for the wonderful session.
Well, thank you, Satya, for the question and the viewpoints in Peloton. Pretty interesting.
No problem. Yep, we'll stay in touch since I got your Twitter handle.
Please.
Sometime.
And where are you based, Satya?
Jersey.
Okay, perfect.
How would you?
Washington, D.C.
Okay, nice. Not that far.
Alrighty. So I guess we can conclude the day. Thank you so much, speakers, for the effort, the time, the knowledge, and the experience you have shared in this platform today. This would reach those who would definitely get the interests of the actual topics, and this will be uploaded via YouTube. So for those who missed this session, you can definitely rewatch it on our YouTube page, which is the name of the platform itself, Let Us Talk It. And you can also visit our website, LetUsTalkIt.com, to register for webinars, or if you wish to be a speaker as well, please feel free to visit our website. So thank you again, speakers, and thank you for the attendees and for those who watched the live session for today. I really appreciate your time, and we hope to see you again next Wednesday for two new topics with two new wonderful speakers to be with us, and still continues to aim to improve and create an informed community for the best of the future. So thank you so much, everyone. All the best and keep safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.